You know, for the last couple of decades, it's felt like the world's skylines were in this constant race to the top. And let's be honest, no country was winning that race more decisively than China. But then, something crazy happened. The race, it just stopped. So let's get into why.
And this wasn't just some small policy change either. This was like slamming on the brakes hard on an industry that was basically defining the image of modern China. So the big question is, what on earth happened?
So on one side, you've got this era of just insane megatall ambition, pushing the absolute limits of engineering. And on the other, a sudden total ceiling. Understanding the shift, well, it tells a fascinating story about safety, about economics, and the real cost of building into the clouds.
Okay, let's dive right in. To really get this, we first have to understand the sheer scale of what China was building. This wasn't just a few tall buildings. It was a complete reinvention of what a city's skyline could even look like.
I mean, we're talking about structures that absolutely dwarf famous landmarks in other parts of the world. The Shanghai Tower, for example, is the third tallest building on the entire planet. These weren't just buildings, They were massive national symbols of progress and power.
This slide right here really puts the new rule into perspective. That 500-meter limit isn't just a small trim off the top. It makes building another Shanghai Tower or even another Tianjin CTF completely impossible. The age of Chinese megatowers was, just like that, officially over.
So, to appreciate why the government slammed on the brakes, you really have to understand the incredible engineering that made these things possible. Because when you build this high, your biggest enemy isn't actually gravity, it's the wind.
And this is the key problem right here. It's called vortex shedding. As wind whips around a big, flat-sided building, it creates these little swirling vortices on the other side, and these vortices pull on the building, causing it to rock back and forth. Now, if the frequency of that rocking matches the building's own natural sway, things can get dangerously violent fast.
And this is one of the most brilliant solutions ever designed. Instead of just fighting the wind with brute force, the architects of the Shanghai Tower gave the building this incredible spiral. This twist, it essentially confuses the wind, so those powerful organized vortices can't even form. It's just a stunning piece of aerodynamic engineering.
But here's the thing. These engineering marvels were starting to show cracks, and I mean that both literally and figuratively. As the buildings got taller and were being built faster and faster, something really important started to get left behind.
And there it is, the official reason, straight from the government. They weren't just worried about future projects, they were seeing a very real trend in the buildings that were already going up. The focus on speed and height was apparently leading to big compromises in safety and construction quality.
This quote really gets to the heart of the criticism. The government basically felt that developers were obsessed with what you might call vanity height. They cared more about building an icon, right? A statement piece for the skyline, rather than creating a building that was actually safe, practical, and made economic sense.
The risks of cutting corners or just making one wrong calculation on a building this tall, they're absolutely astronomical. And there's this terrifying story from New York City's history that shows you just how close to total disaster you can get.
So picture this, 1978. The lead engineer of the brand new Citicorp Center discovers a fatal flaw. A cost-saving change was made from welded to bolted joints, and they failed to calculate for winds hitting the building at the corners. The result? The skyscraper could actually collapse in a hurricane. For months, welders had to work secretly every single night, reinforcing over 200 joints, all while a major hurricane was barreling right for the city. It only turned away at the very last moment.
And get this wasn't some far-fetched one-in-a-million shot. The lead engineer himself calculated that there was a very real 1 in 16 chance of the building collapsing that year. It's just a chilling reminder of how razor-thin the margin for error really is.
But the problems weren't just about structural safety. Oh no. There was a huge, growing economic issue with these giant, iconic towers. I mean, they were being built for prestige, but prestige doesn't pay the bills. This number, it's just staggering. A full year after the magnificent Shanghai Tower opened its doors, only a third of its office space was actually occupied. It was basically a ghost tower, a huge, shiny symbol of ambition that had completely outrun economic reality. And this was a problem across the board. These buildings are incredibly expensive to build and to maintain, and if you can't fill them with tenants, they just become these massive financial black holes. The statement they were making was starting to look like a really, really bad investment.
And finally, on top of the safety and economic issues, developers were literally starting to run into hard, physical limits that even the best engineering in the world couldn't get around. This slide shows that the problem wasn't entirely new. Even before the big 2021 ban, reality was already forcing developers to scale back. The Ping An Finance Center in Shenzhen was supposed to be 660 meters tall. That would have made it the second tallest in the world at the time, but it got cut down.
And the reason was so simple and so non-negotiable. The planned spire would have gotten in the way of flight paths for the nearby airport. It was this stark reminder that no matter how ambitious your design is, you just can't argue with the laws of physics, or, in this case, federal aviation regulations.
So when you put all these pieces together, the safety fears, the empty offices, the hard logistical limits, China's decision to cap its skyscrapers, it starts to make a whole lot of sense.
See, it was this multi-pronged problem. The race to the top was creating buildings that were potentially unsafe, financially unsustainable, and just plain impractical. The government decided it was time to change the very definition of what a successful building even is.
And that right there is the ultimate takeaway. China's new blueprint isn't about giving up ambition. It's about redirecting it. It's a fundamental shift away from a race for vanity height and toward a real pursuit of quality, function, and sustainable cities. China's decision really marks a potential turning point in global architecture, and it begs the question for every major city in the world. In the future, are our skylines going to be defined by how tall we can build or by how well we can build?